I was just talking to a guy that DM'd me last night, and I always respond to the DMs. Who don't matter who you are, I'm here to help you. And he's an out-of-state investor, has 3 deals, and he's looking to get in California investing. He's like, well, how do you deal with the nightmare tenants? Or how do you deal with this? I'm like, look, you're worried about step 10 before you take step 1. I said, like I told you in my previous message, it's all about mindset, right? Start with the mindset, clear your mindset, stop worrying so much about what could go wrong and figure out what could go right? If you have a mentorship that you're a part of or a good community, just lean on them. If you have your numbers correct, you're going to get the deal done, right? At the point that I took the 40, I had no idea how I was going to get the deal done. I didn't know what bank it was going to be. I didn't know how much money it was going to even take for the down payment. I didn't know anything, but I had enough people around me in my community, guys like you guys or Collective Genius members, those types of people that I could call and lean on to really kind of fast track my growth and get this across the finish line.
Welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. This is an episode Scott and I have been extremely excited about, probably the most excited in recent memory. We have our good friend, investor, multifamily owner, Sam Eknoian with Eknoian Investment Group. Dude, how are you, bro?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me back.
Dude, Scott just looked it up. You were on the pod May of last year, so we're coming up close to a year now. And I know today's discussion is going to be bonkers, dude. I'm so excited to get into it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be back.
Just so the guests are aware, Sam was a little under the weather, and Cade and I were so excited for the pod that we made him stick to the game plan and come on. Right. We couldn't wait another day.
Not only stick to the game plan, but then handed him a White Claw and said, hey, we're going to drink this on the podcast. So
White Claw sponsor us.
Right.
I also would like to say, before anybody listens to this podcast, I was re-listening to our podcast from last year that goes over Sam's history getting into the business. We're talking today about a very special deal, but before you hear Sam talk today, listen to Sam a year ago and listen to what he was saying then, because I swear this is a great example of manifestation where when you speak it, it happens. And so with that being said, Sam, fill us in just real quick between last year and today. What have you been doing?
Oh man, what have I not been doing? It sounds like we've been super busy. I think this year we've made the transition into more multifamily space. I was just thinking about on the way up here. Last year, I think I bought like 63 single family houses. Year to date, as of today, I think I'm already at 60 doors on the multifamily space. So I've been trying to transition more to multifamily, like I said, and just trying to really figure out operations to buy back my time. Because as we scale, what I'm finding is I'm just stretched thinner and thinner and thinner, or so it sounds like, or seems like. So I'm just trying to, buy back my time and put certain systems in place. So we're making the most revenue while still living a good life.
Let's go, dude.
I am so pumped to talk about this. We have to open these drinks. Sam, fill us in. What are we celebrating?
We're celebrating closing a 40-unit multifamily apartment building in Visalia.
Let's go,
Cheers,
baby.
Yeah.
More doors. Sam, that a 40-unit apartment building is on a scale and just a process, a totally different type of deal than what you were doing a year ago.
Absolutely. A year ago, I think the biggest one I've done at that point in time was only a few. And then at the end of 2024, I bought a 5-unit, and then to open up 2025, an 8-unit. So in theory, I went from an 8 to a 40, which is a huge jump.
Let's take this 40-unit deal from maybe conception to closing, and let's just run through, because I have to guess, you and I were talking, you were speaking to Cade, we all have bought the biggest projects of our life in the last 90 days.
Yeah,
all three of us have bought really big projects relative to what we had done in the past.
Yep.
I just want to hear your story. Where did this deal come from?
So it came from a group of people. I think they were working on a 16 unit. Backing up a little bit, I think one of my core values is just being a go-giver, right? I'm a deal connector and I'm a go-giver. That's just what I do. So I got a call from Cade Lewis and I think a couple other buddies that are they were putting a 16 unit deal together. I helped them underwrite it a little bit, which was a heck of a deal, by the way. And then after that, I got the referral from one of those partners into a 40 unit complex, which I had no really idea how to do because buying a single family home or even small multifamily is just so much different than a 40 unit complex. But we decided to take the jump.
And you said that this came from a relationship. I mean, how long had you known this person? Was this like somebody you've known since high school?
No, the person that referred it in originally, I think I've only known 4 to 5 months, maybe, and helped him out on one deal.
Wow. So that one deal that you helped on came back and brought you a 40 unit deal.
40 unit deal. Yep.
This is the importance of understanding that real estate is a relationship game.
100%.
And to even provide some additional context, Sam, I don't even know if you know this. I mean, you talked about being a go-giver, right? This was the end of last year. I remember you and I went to grab lunch for I think the first time we had ever sat down for lunch, and you were going through some of the things you were working on. You were underwriting another big deal that, you know, you were trying to work through, and you're like, Cade, you're going to, in the next 12 months, buy multifamily. You're going to buy it. And I remember walking away from that meeting going, this is freaking awesome. Like, that sounds good. I don't know how in the fuck I'm going to go buy multifamily, but I think it traces back to your go-giver mentality. And I remember for this 40 unit, one of the partners on that deal, for our 16 unit, he's like, hey, I also got this 40. And he's like, do you know anybody? And it goes back to how much of a go-giver you are. I remember telling him one name, and I just knew your experience. I didn't know the full story of what you have worked on. I was like, it's Sam. Call Sam.
Yep.
Call Sam.
Yep.
And I think that's what ignited that and him being able to connect with you, and you guys take it from there. But I just want to give you that shout out because it is totally, like Scott said, relationship based. And when you are a go-giver like you are in the community, it always comes back.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for connecting me on that for sure.
You know, what's also interesting, Sam, even before we talk about the deal, is you had already been, and we've talked about this off the podcast, but you've been talking about buying multifamily.
Yeah.
And you already said you've bought a 5 unit, an 8 unit, and now a 40 unit.
Yep.
Was that by happenstance? What do you attribute like your opportunities and then your execution to?
I think my biggest thing that propels my success, close to being a go-giver, is just paid mentorships, right? Like I was in the Pritchard program, still am. I started wanting to transition to multifamily when I talked to Cade. So I joined Deal Room, right? And Deal Room is a mastermind for big multifamily deals anyway, that's all they do is big multifamily deals. So I think joining that is a big component to why I was able to execute so fast from a 5-8 to now 40 and then so on and so forth.
Because you're not reinventing the wheel. You're taking what already works and then applying it.
Right. And you're only as big as your circle, right? So if you're around people that are doing those types of deals and they put the pants on the same way as you do, then it automatically seems like it's more achievable.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, you get introduced to this 40 unit. I mean, give us a little bit of detail on like what drew you to the deal. That even going from 8 to 40 is probably very scary. I mean, what did you love about the deal when you first saw it?
I loved about the deal because I just have a quick matrix. It's just tribal knowledge is what people call it, is if I could get something from 100 to 110 a door, chances are it's going to work, right? Well, I mean, you're going to still have to underwrite the deal pretty heavily, but it passes the smell test. So I knew we were in range. I think it was a little higher than that in the beginning, but after having lunch with the owner and kind of mowing over, the expenses and the R&M and so on and so forth, we were able to get it there. So I knew we had a deal in our hands. The scary part was how are we going to execute the deal, right? So we're used to single family and small multifamily that we could go through Kiavi with 100% financing, right? Because I'm a member of Collective Genius. Or you raise a couple $100,000 of private money, no big deal. We've done plenty of deals over the years. but bringing $4.4 million to the table to close a deal is way different than raising private money, that I've only borrowed at a certain point, couple $100,000. So that's where the struggle lied. And I think I just did a really good job of putting it all together. We'll dive into it, but that's where the excitement comes on this deal for sure.
And what stands out to me is how many people that are in real estate try to understand every step before they take the first one.
Yep.
I mean, you're a perfect example. I've seen you do this many times where you just say yes.
Yeah.
And then you figure it out as you go. Is that what happened here?
100%. Like I was just talking to a guy that DM'd me last night, and I always respond to the DMs who don't matter who you are. I'm here to help you. And he's an out-of-state investor, has 3 deals, and he's looking to get in California investing. He's like, well, how do you deal with the nightmare tenants? Or how do you deal with this? I'm like, look, you're worried about step 10 before you take step 1. I said, like I told you in my previous message, it's all about mindset, right? Start with the mindset, clear your mindset, stop worrying so much about what could go wrong and figure out what could go right, right? If you have a mentorship that you're a part of or a good community, just lean on them. If you have your numbers correct, you're going to get the deal done, right? At the point that I took the 40, I had no idea how I was going to get the deal done. I didn't know what bank it was going to be. I didn't know how much money it was going to even take for the down payment. I didn't know anything, but I had enough people around me in my community, guys like you guys or Collective Genius members, those types of people that I could call and lean on to really kind of fast track my growth and get this across the finish line. At the end of the day, I think we got the 40 unit closed in like 40 something days. Now looking back at it, Citizens Bank, they're like, look, this is abnormal. It usually takes 90 days. 30 days due diligence, 30 days for loan, 30 days optional extension. And this is your first big deal. So it was quite impressive what we actually got done in a short amount of time, for sure.
Was that so step 1 for you, was it figuring out what the funding was going to look like? So pass the sniff test, you take a deeper dive into the deal, meet with the owner, you kind of figure out what the groundwork is. Was your step 1 to figure out, okay, now that this seems like it's going to come to fruition, do I need to figure out where the money's coming from?
Yeah, I think step 1 was locking up the deal, because I'm just a firm believer in my community and my network. If I have a good enough deal, the money will come. I've always said that. Whether it's partnering with, someone from my community or a mentor or whoever. So we locked up the deal, and then after that I had to figure out, okay, how is this all going to work? What is the structure going to be like? And who's going to finance it? And that's kind of where the magic happened. Right from the beginning, I made a call to Collective Genius, and they introduced me to a big national bank. But the big national bank was 12% and 2 points and $1.4 million down, which I've never raised that much before, let alone $1.4 million in second.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, man, we got to figure something out. So I remember listening to a few podcasts and hearing, my mentors talk of like small local banks. So I bank with Citizens Business Bank, the Kingsburg one. I think there's only 13 branches total. And I remember calling the bank manager because they know me well, go in there frequently. And I remember saying, hey, Olga, I'm going to probably need a loan for a multifamily project. Do you guys do anything like that? She said, sure. So she connected me with the VP from Visalia, Rob, and I think his name's Jason. Anyways, so I had a call with them. They're like, tell me a little bit about what you do. Single family investor. They have no history of my track record or anything. And all I had was a loan that could have got approved from 12% and 2 points, which is pretty tough at that level.
Yeah.
So I talked to them. They happened to know of the deal because when the deal got foreclosed, they actually were the bank that foreclosed on the gentleman who had it. So I talked to them, and they're like, right away, after 10 minutes, they're like, we like you. We know that you're a good operator. So send us your track record, send me what you got, and I think we can make something work. At the end of the day, they put the deal together for short-term money because we're going to have to secure short-term money for the deal and then raise up rents and then do a cash-out refi, pay back the lender.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, after doing all that, they secured it for 6.8% and a quarter point on this deal.
How much
short-term money?
How much money does that save approximately per month in your mortgage?
$10,000.
Holy crap.
And that $10,000
Yep.
gives you wiggle room for things to go wrong.
Yep.
Or if everything goes right, it's just profit.
Just profit. Yeah. So
Wow.
essentially, I was able to raise short-term money for long-term interest rates, right? Because short-term money is always 10, 12%, right? So,
Wow.
yeah. The only caveat on their deal is it was a 6.8, and then it was a quarter point, but there was a prepayment penalty. But then I negotiated with the bank. I'm like, I don't really want a prepayment penalty because I believe in myself as an operator, and in 6 to 9 months, it's going to be operating at a whole different level with rent increases and paid parking and all these other things. I'm going to want to do a cash out refi before that short-term penalty's up. So they said, okay, fine. Instead of a quarter point, give us a point and we will do no prepaid penalty. So we could refi anytime.
See,
way.
I just love it. You're always betting on yourself.
Yeah.
And you brought up that Citizens told you 90 days to do the loan and you did it in 40 on your first attempt. You didn't know the process. You didn't know where you were going to get it, and you still did it in just over 40 days. I love that you are willing to put your money where your mouth is, pay 0.75 more, which in this case is how much more money? I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Because you're confident that like, I am going to prove you wrong that I can move this faster.
Yeah. And that's it. All goes back to leading from day one. It's all about mindset. Don't worry about anything else. Just as long as you believe in yourself and you have a strong mindset, the rest will fall into place, right? The rest will fall into place.
I think we skipped ahead a little bit because a lot of people listening to this, including myself, we are novices in how to underwrite a multifamily deal. I don't need to know every little thing, but maybe can you just break down generically when you're looking at a multifamily deal, what factors are you looking at? How are you calculating what price to pay?
Yeah. So just back the napkin math is what I do first is gross rents, right? And then right away, which is different than single family, is you take 50% expenses gone.
Really? 50%?
50%.
So if I'm getting $100,000 a month in rent, 50 grand
Gone.
of that is to
Gone.
what?
Taxes, insurance, repairs and maintenance, payroll, attorney fees, gas, electric, everything. That's just to run the complex. And
So-
anything over 16 units, I believe, is you have to have an on-site manager full time.
So for the people on Instagram, there's specific people that come to mind that you could go out on social media and say that you're cash flowing $100,000.
No.
You call BS.
BS.
You think most operators, they make about half of what their rent roll says?
Absolutely.
Does that include the mortgage?
That's without the mortgage.
Oh.
So then you go 100. Let's just use that example. 100,000, 50% in expenses. Then you subtract the mortgage. Then that's your net.
So in a deal like this, how do you get all of the expenses? I mean, I know how to get the expenses on a single family because it's really easy. I mean, anybody, including Kate and myself, can track the expenses for, what was Sheridan, 124 Sheridan?
Yeah.
It's a super easy P&L. How does somebody even like start if they got a 60 unit fall in their lap? They got all the rent roll.
Yep.
How do they start?
So on the
learning?
T12 will tell you how the property's performing.
What's a T12?
Meaning that's all the financial data, like the repairs and maintenance, the taxes, the insurance, currently in line with the current owner. But just because it's on a spreadsheet doesn't mean that's true, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be a good enough operator to look at it for insurance, for example. So if I look at a line item on insurance on a 40 unit, it says $10,000, I call BS. It's about 40 to 50. But that's where you start. You look at the T12, which is the financial data of the current operator.
And the last 12 months.
From the last 12
Trailing
months.
12.
Trailing 12. And then what I do is I take it to the deal room calls on Tuesday. So I take the financial data, I plug it into the spreadsheet. I have a nice spreadsheet from the mentors, right? And then there's a call every Tuesday. And I plug it in and then they just poke it apart. So at those calls, the guys with thousands and thousands of units that we know, like, and trust are saying, well, Sam, that insurance says 10,000. What? It should be 40. Or repair and maintenance you have on a 40 unit building, you're only going to spend 5,000 in repair and maintenance. Should be probably 5,000 a month. So on and so forth. So after doing it a few times, you kind of get the hang of it and you're able to look at a T12 very fast, just like we underwrite single family. and know if it's in line, right?
What happens if it's not?
If it's not in line,
Yeah. What if, because, we see sellers all the time. They're, they inherited property, or sure, they bought it, but they're not true operators.
Yeah.
They're just not organized. Yeah. So what do you do if they don't provide any T12?
then you're going to have to do the research and come up with your own. The other thing is a lot of people, smaller operators will say, well, look, I have this 40 unit complex and it's worth X because I'm running it at 25% expense. Okay. But what is it going to take for me to run it? Right. Maybe the owner's retired and he just wants to sit there. So he has no payroll for $40,000 a year. Can Sam do that? No. The other thing is when you get into those situations, what the bank looks at, even if I'm buying from Scott and you have a 25% expense ratio, the bank's even going to call BS on it because they want to see you at minimal 40 to 50%.
Why is that?
Because if the bank was to foreclose on it, that's what would be their expense ratio, about 40 to 50. 50 is a better number.
Interesting.
So the bank would never say, just because Sam has a 25% or Scott has a 25% expense ratio, right? Sam wants to buy it at X because it's such a good performer. The bank's going to say, no, we're not lending on that. You have to put a 40 to 50% expense ratio. We're not lending on it, because if you get hit by the bus, Sam, even though you're able to do it at 25 like Scott did, we cannot do it like that. It has to be a 40 minimum to 50% expense ratio.
Very interesting. So obviously it sounds like you took that information. I mean, in this specific situation, it was you said Citizens had to foreclose. It was purchased at auction, and then you purchased it from a person in intermediary.
Yeah.
Did they have a T12?
They did not. They had a short one of about 4 months. So that's where I had to come in and do all of our own due diligence and double check everything.
How much time, if you were to take a guess, I mean, you're putting up $4+ million for a project. How much time do you think you invested of Sam Eknoian's time to come up with these assumptions?
Oh, I mean,
were you just living and breathing this?
About 38 days until I knew docs were coming out. Yeah, of course.
This is what I love about you. You just obsess.
That was the only thing.
And you are so dialed in. So, I mean, there's the financial tracking side.
Yep.
What about the physical inspections? I just walked a 16 unit.
Yeah.
Remember how I asked you if you were able to walk all the units? I got into 4 of the 16. Yeah. That was kind of what I expected with your deal. How did the physical inspection of the property go for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we actually paid a lot extra just to do more inspections because something was telling me too, because I'm a little cautious on bigger deals because it's uncharted territory, or at least it was until this deal. So once we agreed on price, and let's just round down a little bit to $110 a door. Like, why are we getting this for $110 a door? Like, there has to be something I'm missing. And I remember.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm just saying, because we got it at a pretty good discount, right? I'm thinking like, am I missing something, right? It started to play with my emotions. Like, what am I missing? I underwrote it with my mentors. They liked the deal, but is there like half the units trashed? What is going on? So I remember one of my mentors say, look, when you underwrite big, large commercial deals, you need to go in every single unit. If there's 40 and you go in 39, that's not good enough. You need to go in 40 units. So which is crazy is the bank, when they called for their inspections, even as conservative as Citizens is, they only went in 3 units. Outside of Citizens Bank, to protect myself, is I paid for my own inspections. So I basically paid for inspections twice. I paid for this deal alone. I paid almost $20,000 in inspections. So I set up an inspection with an inspector that I know, like, and trust. And I walked every single apartment. And we were there for like 4.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did it go? I guess that's a natural question.
And it went great. To my surprise, I'm like, man, these are great. They're good. You have the laminate flooring. I mean, you don't have granite. You have older tile, but it's okay, right? That's the class it's in. Every single one of them checked out. Every single one of them. I called for a pest. I called for a termite. Called for a phase 1. Called for the home. Every inspection that I could do, I did, and they all checked out. Every single one of them.
So this is a question. You mentioned kind of tile being outdated, but it had the laminate flooring, right? what's the thought process if you want to try and maximize the rent on every single unit? What condition do those units need to be in for you to raise the rent? Because traditionally, some people might think, okay, well, I need to go in and rehab the entire unit. Right. Everything needs to have the nice floors, the nice countertops, everything. But I know in my discussions with you, that's maybe not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think what you have to do, and you have to be an expert at, is you have to know your market. So before I was walking these property, I was already analyzing other properties that were for rent in that area. And what were they renting for? And what did they look like, right? Because if we go in and spend, in this case, $200,000 on granite, when the one down the street is, it's not of that caliber, or it's not in that type of area, North Fresno or something like that, why do it? So for me, less is more. I want to make sure they're clean and everyone's happy, but I just definitely don't want to over rehab. For me, I just pride myself more on being a great landlord than like a 10 out of a 10 unit, right? So any of my units will never be granite or, high-end floors or high-end switches or high-end anything. They'll be nice and clean, but where I think we set ourselves apart is just being that great landlord. And I say it's all my time, every time when I take over property, I'm going to treat you as if my mom was living here. If something goes wrong, you call our team. We're going to be out here just as fast as if it was my mom. That's it.
I've never heard you say that before.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that identity?
Just said it. Yeah.
I mean,
just came up with it. I think it's just because I have such a passion. Sometimes it just like stuff just flows, right?
And so your mission with your rental portfolio, your goal isn't to be the luxury condo owner of the Central Valley. It's to be the best customer experience.
Customer experience. That's the best. Yeah.
That's really, it's a different take on it, because I think a lot of people get focused so much on the property, and you've seen this. I know you have.
Yeah.
They over improve the property, but then they don't perform as the owner. And that leads to worse reviews than if you did it your way, where the unit's clean and healthy and safe.
Yeah.
And the experience is fantastic.
Experience is fantastic.
This is insightful. It's good for us to know.
Yeah.
Cade and I, as small-time landlords, have had our fair share of dealing with property managers that maybe it's hard to manage from afar, and we're not the ones in the weeds.
Yeah.
And I've always questioned you to your face, like, why are you managing all these units?
Yep.
But it's hard for me to think any property manager would have that same level of intensity about the customer experience for the tenant.
Yeah. We've always prided ourselves on doing it that way, and it's always worked. Even dating back, I think I mentioned on the last podcast, even COVID, where everyone's scared was people not paying. I just called every single tenant and asked them if they needed help. Do you need groceries? What do you need? Is everything okay? Right? Everyone liked it, and everyone was thankful that I called. At the end of the day, really no one took us up on it, but at least the thought was there, right? So if you do stuff like that and treat people the way you want to be treated, it will always come back. I don't care if it's helping someone with a deal to underwrite when you barely know them, or it doesn't really matter. It'll always come back to you for sure.
And it really comes back to, what does it even cost you to have that level of care?
Nothing.
Sam Eknoian has more fucking friends in the Central Valley than anybody I know. Every tenant, I have to guess, loves the fact that you're that involved.
I think so. And we're always fair. Everything, I think, is on the up and up. I think we just pride ourselves so much on being the best landlord out there.
Yeah.
And it just works. As simple as it sounds, it just works.
Yeah. I mean, success doesn't have to be complicated.
No.
It's not easy. I have to guess that it's not easy to set that standard with your team, or even hold yourself to that standard. I bet there's times where those calls come in and you're on vacation and you want to just say, let it wait for 4 days.
Yeah. Yep.
But it is simple.
It is very simple.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So found the deal from a relationship.
Yep.
You do your physical inspections. You overcome that, maybe, I don't know if insecurity is the right word, but just that concern that maybe there's something you're missing.
Just because it was so big. Now, again, back dating just a smidge. I mean, we still buy multifamily, but putting my multifamily hat back on is if you buy a single family house and I don't walk it, it's sight unseen. It's not that big of a deal if something happens to me.
The downside small.
The downside small. Mm-hmm. If you screw up something on a 40 unit complex, that could be detrimental. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Millions.
Millions.
Very easily.
Right.
So you get through the physical inspection. How far into escrow are you when you kind of get that clarity of the condition and the capital expense you may need to put into the property?
About 15 days. 15 days in.
So what's the remainder 30 days? What are you doing?
So the remainder of 30 days is, at that point we were lined up with a big local bank really to close the deal at the 12%, right? And then that's when
With a national bank.
The national bank, yeah, the national bank. And that's when we started doing the transition. And I called Citizens and set up the meeting. And he's like, that's when Rob said, the vice president, he's like, I really like you, but I'm going to put the president on the phone. I want him to hear for himself. And I did. And that's where we started to transition. So I think it slowed us down a little bit because we were already with the big national bank. And then we had to pivot to Citizens, right? And overcome a few obstacles. But yeah, overall it worked. Good thing I had a good accountant and a good team to provide all the financial data, because that's one thing I think would have definitely hindered the deal.
Would have killed it for sure.
Would have killed it.
Yeah.
And you're not an accountant.
No.
That's just not that's not who you are.
No.
So, and sorry, kid, I'm asking so many questions. My brain
Stay on a roll, baby.
Yeah, my brain is. I'm looking at my clock like, okay,
go ahead.
have I already ran through our time? Can you enlighten us on how a bank underwrites this? How they decide how much they're going to finance? I mean, on a single family home, you mentioned Kiavi, a hard money lender. Private money lenders are different too. It feels a lot more relationship because it's, like you said, smaller risk even for them.
Right.
But on a commercial loan like this, I mean, break it down. Are they going out and looking for other 40-unit buildings that have sold? How do they underwrite these things?
You know, it was interesting. It kind of dated back to when I first got started and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And in Rich Dad Poor Dad, it says no one cares about your bachelor's degree, and you never go in the bank and say, here, I have a bachelor's, lend me money. When you go at a big scale, they say, give me your financial statement, right? And luckily I had one of those to give, which is nothing more than everything I have, all the debt on it, right? Some stuff what I have pay it off, so on and so forth. So I think a big part of it is the financial statement on how strong you are, or your entity, or your partners if you have them. The other part is obviously the deal, but I think the deal, it relates back to underwriting it at a certain degree at the 50% expenses. So I think if you have all that lined up on top of a strong financial statement, I think that's where you're going to get financing for sure.
And that financial statement, is that like a PFS, a personal financial statement?
Yep.
Like it goes through your schedule of real estate.
That's right.
You know, has Sam ever been in foreclosures? Like, has he ever declared bankruptcy?
What's
stuff
your
like
liquidity? All that
Interesting.
stuff. And I try to keep that updated once a quarter as I buy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I just started doing that a long time ago. I mean, the first off when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I just started it way back then as like a cool exercise to be like, oh, I have 3 rentals. Let's see what my net worth is, right? If you have a little bit of liquidity and then you have a mortgage payment, and then what is the property worth? And yeah.
So did you start building that out? Are you saying you started with a PFS like from day one? Mm-hmm. Do you think that made your life easier?
Oh yeah.
I had to do a PFS for our warehouse. I did not have one dialed in. It took me no less than 18 hours, and I have nowhere near as much as you going on.
Oh,
So for people thinking about getting into multifamily, I mean, are you storing all this information on Excel? Do you have a program you use?
it's on an Excel spreadsheet, and it's pretty easy to use, and I just update it as I go.
If somebody were to try to replicate what you're doing, is there like a template they can find online?
There is a template.
What would you look up?
I don't know. We would probably just simple Google search. I think in the Rich Dad Poor Dad, there was a link to his website or something of that nature where you could get one pretty easy. That's how I did it.
And you started there and you've just built it out from there.
Same one. Yeah.
Wow.
And just extend it.
What a flex. He goes, add 30 more rows to the schedule of real estate.
Yeah.
That's sick, dude.
Dude, so we're now at the point you've switched banks, you've switched the financing. Where do all of the cards fall in terms of the actual specifics on, I know you shared the point and the percentage for the short-term loan, but What's the final purchase price? What are you having to bring down? What are the actual meat and potatoes of what the final terms were for the purchase?
And your credit score and your social security number.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So the purchase price ended up being $4.425 million.
Okay.
So to say $4.4 million. The other thing that I learned is with Kiavi or even Renovo, because at this point I've done a 5 and an 8, 2 8-plexes and a 7. At Renovo, I was used to 15% down. So I assumed, I'm like, well, Citizens might just be 15% down. That's not the case. It's about double. So after they give me the term sheets, that's when they shed some light on, okay, it's going to seem to be like 1.3 to $1.4 million. And that was another hurdle that I had to jump through.
Because were you sitting there with 1.3 or 1.4 million in the bank?
Not even close. Not even close. So at that point, I had to figure out how am I going to raise that money. And luckily for me is a couple weeks prior, I went to lunch with one of my private money lenders and I sat down and I was like, hey, I've been starting to go, didn't use them that much as of late. And I said, hey, I'm going into bigger deals, so on and so forth. And then they asked, like, okay, well, if you ever get smaller deals that come across your desk and you're too busy doing bigger stuff, let us know and we could flip them or partner up or do something like that. So I remember that conversation. So I made the call and I talked to him and I said, hey, I have this 40-unit deal. Would you be interested in coming as a financial partner on this? And then we could kind of figure it out. The money's going to have to sit in second, but maybe we could tie it to different properties or create a different entity. We'll figure it out. And long story short, the answer was yes. So that's how we got it done.
So you brought in a financial partner,
Yep.
we'll say a strategic partner to help bring that difference.
Yeah.
How did creativity kind of play into that? It sounds like you just brought up like 6 objection handlers. Like you're going to be in second. For those who don't know, second means higher risk, right? You brought up, you aren't sure exactly how to handle it. I mean, you threw out like 6 different ways you could overcome that. I mean, was that...
I just think just having the confidence, again, it goes back to just being genuine and just being honest, laying it out on the table, right? I never like to just have a conversation, not throw it all out there. I'd rather throw it out into the second positions and all the hard stuff first before you come at me with it, right? So I just laid it all out there. That's what I did.
And does this person, how long have you known this person?
Interesting enough, I met these people through Jason's coaching program. So I met them probably a year ago and used them probably 5 to 6 times, maybe.
Again.
On 200,000, 150, 80, way different amounts than this caliber of money.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
No.
And it's the reputation that you had from those past deals.
Yeah. Yep. And then I also did explain, and I let them do their own due diligence, but I explained like, look, at worst case scenario, we have this, let's just call it 1.4, your $1.4 million tied up. If for some reason it's not working out or it's just not operating the way I think, could always hit the sell button. I know with great certainty that especially when this deal is stabilized, it's going to be worth a lot more than what it is today. So if you're willing to bet on me and take this ride, I think either way, it's going to be a win-win.
So you close on it. You own it now?
Yep, we own it now. We closed yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yesterday.
I'm a little pissed off I didn't get the call.
Yeah.
We have talked about
You're
this
right.
deal.
Yep.
So you closed on it yesterday.
Yesterday.
You've had one good night's sleep.
Yep.
How exciting were your dreams last night?
Right. I was just so dead tired. I was out. Right.
You finally don't have that deal keeping you up at night.
Yeah. And it kind of was because I just get just as I get vested into anything I do or care about, I was so invested in this deal, like hours every day on the phone, double checking the spreadsheet, bringing it back up. What if this, what if that? Calling the bankers where we're at. There was a lot of times the national bank called me back and they're like, Sam, I'm just going to tell you right now, you went with Citizens and we applaud you for that to get that low rate, but they're definitely baiting and switching you. There is no way they're closing that deal in under 90 days. Guarantee you. So then I would have to go back to Citizens and be like, this is what I'm hearing. Are you sure credit risk has ran all their checks and we're good to go on this? Are you sure all the sign-offs are on? Then I'd make another call to another mentor. This is what I'm hearing, right? What do you think? I kind of think they're right. Keep checking. So it was just, I was pulled in so many different ways because I just don't have that experience, right? But at the end of the day, they did what they said they were going to do, and they got it done.
Kind of a nice flex to peer at that national lender from the window and go, yeah, close to 40 days.
Yeah.
Did you have a nice steak dinner?
I haven't had a nice steak dinner yet. No.
Pursuit of Property will get you a nice steak dinner.
Right on.
You've done a ton for our pod. I'm curious, now that you own the place, what's the game plan moving forward?
Yeah.
So the game plan moving forward is to just get it stable.
What does that mean?
I like this property. Another reason why I liked it so much is the rents aren't so far off from market rents. So there's not a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done. Typically, when I bought deals like this before, not like the smaller deals, you would have rents at $7. I'm getting a good deal, but rents would be $700, and then market's $14. In this particular case, rents are already $12, market's $14. So there's really not going to be too much of a challenge to get them where they need to be. Now, there's guidelines and rules in the state of California. We can only raise them so high. But if we do the math, it's not going to take that long to get it stabilized. And I also think that if we just do a minimal increase, the value will pop exponentially to get us to that cash out refi pretty quickly.
So yeah, I was going to ask, what's that goal number for the cash out refi?
So the goal is to do a cash out refi, obviously as quick as possible. I think it's going to take some time, but we want to get it up to a $7 million valuation.
And you bought it for 4.4.
4.4.
And how much cash do you have to outlay? How much cash do you have to put into the property to get it to be worth $7 million?
How much cash is needed is not much at all because it's going to be based off an NOI, so the net operating income. Because at the end of the day, it's you're buying a business, right?
That is an important thing.
Yeah. So it's not really about the cash outlay. I mean, that's for us, it's going to be minimal because again, when I walk the units, everything looks pretty darn good. I mean, minor sinks and, little stuff here and there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's minimal. I would say maybe 50, 80 max. The real play here is just to increase revenue. Whether that's for paid parking where the covers are, whether that's increasing rents a little bit, whether that's tuning up the expenses a little bit, because I'm an insurance agent. The insurance on the place currently before we took it over was $40,000. We have access to a special program just for apartment investors, large apartment investors. Ended up getting the insurance for $20,000. So that helps right there. I think that's $1,600 a month or some odd change. So just doing little tweaks like that. And again, that's where I rely on my circle and sphere of influence that has already been there thousands of times to coach me through deals like this.
And what's the long-term strategy? I mean, I heard you say earlier, at any point you could press sell. Is that the game plan or?
No, the game plan is not to sell. It's nice to have, when I do deals, I always like to have multiple exit strategies. So I love it that I could hit sell any moment and probably make a few bucks. But the strategy for me is long-term buy and hold. Because even if we sell and make a big rip, what is it worth if you have nothing to put it into, right? And at the end of the day, you still just have a high-paying job. You got to find the next deal, and then the next deal, and the next deal. For me, is every deal that makes decent cash flow gets me that much closer to where I want to be, right? Slowing down, delegating tasks, and just really managing stuff from afar.
What's that number for you? Where do you want to be?
I think it's not a number of units. I think it's a number of revenue a month. And I think if I could get to 100,000, then I'd be good.
And what I love about Sam Eknoian is he's saying 100,000, and we're going to have him on the pod in a year. And he's going to say $1 million a month.
Yeah.
This dude is exponential. If you go back and you listened to that past podcast, like I said at the start, I am certain that the same growth you saw from that pod to this, you'll see from this podcast to the next.
Yep.
Dude, one of the things you brought up, and this is a super powerful thing to talk about. A lot of people in our community are single family investors. I myself am a single family investor. What you just said about you bought a property for $4.4 million. The actual cash to improve the value of the property is only about $50,000, marginal at this scale. to then be worth $7 million. On a single family home, you're buying a house for $150, you're putting $50 in and you're selling it for $270.
Right.
Why is it so much more flexible for how you leverage? Just kind of dive into that, because I think it's a powerful tool that you've really
I
captured.
think it's just like single family. You're just buying at scale for sure. And I also know that instead of being held captive to what the appraiser says in an appraisal, it goes off the NOI, the net operating income. So as long as you know that calculation, right, then you should be pretty safe.
Yeah, and to say it like in layman's terms, you're not stuck with what other people are selling their houses for.
Yeah.
You are held to your ability to make the building profitable to a percentage. Like you brought up, banks are always going to say, Sam, you're running it at 25%. Good for you. We can't replicate that.
Right.
But you have more control over the value of your property. It's not as influenced by the market and what other people are selling their property.
Right. And where I learned that is the first jump that I made from single family. Again, we still do single family, but the first jump I made to the 5 unit. And that's a good example. It's in Visalia. It's down the street from the 40. And it really opened my eyes on the not only the cash flow, but the equity and how much money you can make if you sell. When I bought the 5 unit, I bought it at $110 a door, which was pretty good. So I bought that for $550,000. I didn't put $1 into the property. I got rent raised to 14, which is market rents. I got it reappraised, and the value was $880.
You created $300,000
because I knocked on 5 doors and raised the rent. I personally did that. That's it. And it was in less than 6 months. So for me, would I rather buy a single family house, spend $50,000, deal with the headache and the people breaking in to make $40,000? Or would you rather do it a different way at scale and make more money? By the way, the bigger deals I think are less problematic, in my opinion, than the smaller deals.
What makes you say that?
Because there's more of a reward. There's more of a reward for the bigger deals, right? And I think on the bigger deals, for me, because you could just increase the NOI and not all the time you have to go in there and renovate the whole place for $50 to $100K and tear the house apart and get it on the market and wait for someone to buy it. And then there's a new president or new economy's dropping or whatever the case may be. You're betting on a lot of things to go right to get the 40 or 50K or whatever rip you're taking. On multifamily, for me, it's a lot easier and more predictable. Whether we're selling it or cash out refi. By the way, when you cash out refi, it's all tax free. So again, why would I want to sell something, pay taxes, when I could just stabilize the asset, pop $300,000 in value on the 5-plex example, cash out refi, no taxes, and move on to the next deal and cash flow.
Rinse and repeat, baby.
Rinse and repeat. All goes back to the Rich Dad Poor Dad book.
I was going to say it's evident that your mindset is sharper than most, right? Like not only the belief in yourself, but the belief in the ability that you can do it, even if you hadn't done it before. Closing on this deal, was there a new takeaway for you in terms of your mindset? Or was it just reaffirming that everything you've believed in that you put towards yourself, it's just the fruits of your labor?
A little bit of both, because even yesterday when we closed it, I just wasn't so ecstatic, right? Like, oh my God, this is a 40 unit. This is the biggest deal. It's because I believed in myself the whole way. Like for me, it was just like, yep, we're done. That's what I thought was going to happen. Let's move on, keep going. But it has opened my eyes to realize that I don't care who you are or who you're from. If you want something bad enough, you could go get it. Whether that's you want to go develop and make millions of dollars, whether you want to own thousands of units, it's all doable. Whether you want to buy 140 unit a year for the next 10 years and become ultra wealthy, whatever you want, it's all doable. And that's the cool thing.
I think you had brought this up to me.
Yeah.
It was something along the lines of, would you rather do 100 smaller deals or 2 big deals a year?
Yeah.
What's the game plan, future podcast, what is Sam Eknoian going to do for the next 5-10 years?
So I think what we're going to end up doing is on our wholesaling business, we'll keep wholesaling the houses and doing all that type of stuff. I won't flip, or I'll flip a little bit, probably not buy as many single families, probably hardly any to hold. And my focus will be on bigger multifamily deals. So right now I'm in talks too on some of my small single family homes. If they aren't cash flowing or breaking even and there's a lot of equity, I will probably end up dumping those, taking all that money and putting them into bigger deals.
I'm so pumped, dude.
Because where I'm thinking too is, what is it all worth? You have to buy back your time, right? And systems turn chaos into predictability, right? So before multifamily, I had chaos because it was all single family and I get the call and I'm the owner and I'm calling all the contractors to fix the toilets and all that stuff. If I could wipe that out and put a system in place on 40 unit properties or 60 units where there's just a property manager in place, right? And I don't have to take those calls. Systems create predictability, and I'll be in a much better spot and buy back my time.
There's the clip, bro. That was the mic drop.
Clip him.
Yeah.
Sam, leave us with this. I know we've all got things to do. You just brought it up, buying your time back. You're one of the busiest people I know.
Yeah.
For the people listening that want to get into multifamily, they're going to listen to this podcast. They've never done any multifamily. What are you telling them right now?
I'm telling them right now, surround yourself with the people that are already doing it. Don't do it alone. I think multifamily is great, and we talked about a lot of the good stuff. But if something goes wrong, it could go extremely wrong. Again, going back to the single family, you lose a couple bucks on a single family, you'll recover. Multifamily is a way bigger beast, so don't do it alone. Hire a coach, a mentor, get in a community to propel your success and have them look at all your deals. That's what I would say would be step one. And that's why I was able to scale so fast in this multifamily arena, for sure.
There it is. Sam, dude, we appreciate you coming on and doing the deal breakdown on this. Like Scott said, I know when we have you back on, whether it's in a year or sometime next year, it's going to be crazy to look back on this conversation, look back on the conversation from 2024, and just be amazed at when you're intentional and when you have that mindset, the possibility of the things that can happen, dude.
Absolutely.
You're a testament to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think it's important too for your listeners is don't worry about step 2, 3, or 4. Just worry. I just heard this the other day. Just worry about the MIT. What's my most important thing today? If you could just worry about that, you'll be more successful than you ever dreamed about.
Dude's a clip machine.
He is.
Yeah. Yep.
Sam, thanks for coming back on the podcast. We are pumped for you. We are going to get you a steak dinner. I will connect with you and figure out where you want to go.
Perfect.
We are celebrating you. You have helped both of us in our biggest deals in the last 90 days. So we owe it to you as a thank you.
Cool.
The go-giver mindset always attracts 10 times what you give.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming on. Get better. Enjoy your White Claw.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, man.
All right. Cool.